Welcome to Salt and Siren, the current situation. I'm your host, Brianna, a marine biology student, a mother, a military wife, and a lifelong lover of the ocean. And in this podcast, we are going to take a closer look at what's happening beneath the surface. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Salt and Siren, the current situation. Today's episode is one I have been waiting to share. Not because it's important, but because it's personal. We're talking about sharks. Not the Hollywood version, not the fear-based headlines, not the monster lurking beneath the surface narrative we've been fed for decades. We're talking about the truth. Because sharks have been given what I like to call a villain edit. A version of their story that's been cut, rearranged, dramatized, and stripped of context until all that's left is fear. And the wild thing is, most of us don't even realize how much that edit has shaped the way we see them. So today, we're going to peel that edit back. We're going to look at where it came from, why it stuck, and what it cost the ocean. And we're going to meet the real sharks, the ones who keep the ecosystems balanced, the ones who've been here longer than trees, the ones who are far more likely to swim away from you than toward you. And yes, we're going to talk about rays too, and whale sharks, and the quiet cosmic beauty of creatures most people never get the chance to understand. But before we get into all of that, I want to start with a simple truth. Fear is a powerful storyteller. And for sharks, fear has been the narrator for far too long. If you ask the average person what comes to mind when they think of sharks, you'll hear the same words over and over. Dangerous, aggressive, unpredictable, man-eater. But here's the thing. Those words didn't come from science. They didn't come from people who spend time with sharks. They didn't come from divers, researchers, conservationists, or anyone who actually knows these animals. They came from movies, from sensational headlines, from fear-based storytelling that was never meant to be accurate, just entertaining. And the biggest turning point? You already know it. Jaws. When Jaws came out in 1975, it changed everything. Not just for cinema, for sharks. Before that movie, sharks were seen as mysterious, maybe a little intimidating, sure, but not monsters. After Jaws, public perception flipped almost overnight. People were terrified. Beaches emptied, shark hunts were organized, governments funded culls. And when I say culls, I don't mean relocation or rescue. A cull is when governments decide that the answer to fear is to remove sharks from the water permanently. After Jaws, entire coastlines responded by sending traps and drumlines, not because sharks had done something wrong, but because people were scared. Sharks were killed simply for being present, simply for existing in the only home they've ever known. It's one of those moments in history where you look back and think, we should have known better. And the media realized something dangerous. Fear sells. Suddenly, every shark sighting became breaking news. Every bite became a headline. Every story was framed like a horror movie. And sharks, ancient, essential, misunderstood sharks, became the villains. Here's the truth. Sharks don't hunt humans. They don't stalk beaches, they don't crave blood, they don't target swimmers. Most bites are cases of mistaken identity. A shark confusing a surfer for a seal in murky water. And even then, the shark almost always lets go once it realizes the mistake. But that nuance never made the headlines, because nuance doesn't go viral. Fear does. So let's talk about who sharks really are. Sharks are regulators, balancers, architects of the ocean's stability. They keep prey populations healthy, they prevent disease from spreading, they maintain the structure of food webs, They shape ecosystems simply by existing. Something most of you may not know. Rays are kind of like sharks. Manta rays, stingrays, eagle rays, they're all part of the same phylum. They're basically the elegant winged cousin of sharks. So when someone says, I'm terrified of sharks, but I love rays, it's like, I'm scared of dogs, but wolves are adorable. They're family. They're connected. They're part of the same evolutionary story. Speaking of family, there's one member of the shark family that deserves its own moment. Not because it's scary, but because it's one of the most breathtaking creatures on the planet. I might be a little biased, though, because they're my favorite. We're going to talk about the whale shark. If you've never seen one up close, that's okay, neither have I. But I've watched videos. Imagine a creature the size of a school bus moving with the calm of a drifting cloud. Their skin is covered in spots that look like they were hand-painted from the night sky, every dot and line completely unique, like a fingerprint, but written in starlight. They don't hunt seals. They don't chase boats. They don't lurk in the shadows waiting for a dramatic movie moment. They filter feed plankton. They're gentle, cosmic giants, just passing through the water, carrying a little bit of galaxy on their backs. And yet, because they have the word shark in their name, they get lumped into the same fear category as great whites. That's the power of the villain edit. It doesn't care about truth. It cares about the story people already think they know. When sharks were turned into villains, the consequences didn't stay on movie screens. They spilled into policy, into public opinion, into the way entire coastlines responded to the presence of a fin in the water. Fear didn't just change how people felt about sharks. It changed what people did to sharks. And the ocean felt every bit of it. Because when you remove apex predators, the species at the top of the food web, everything underneath them shifts. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, steadily, like a tower losing its foundation one block at a time. So here's what happened. Prey populations exploded in some areas. Overgrazing damaged reefs. Sick and weak animals survived longer, spreading disease. Entire food webs warped out of balance. Coral reefs became more vulnerable. Fisheries collapsed in places where sharks had once kept things stable. Sharks weren't just misunderstood. They were missing. Ecosystems don't forget when a guardian disappears. Let's talk about shark behavior. The real kind, not the Hollywood kind. Here are a few truths that rarely make the headlines. Truth 1. Sharks avoid humans whenever possible. Most species of sharks are shy. They don't want confrontation. They don't want conflict. They want to live their shark lives without bumping into us. Truth 2. Sharks bite out of confusion, not aggression. Surfers look like seals from below. Murky water hides details, and sharks don't have hands. They can't just grab you and find out what you are. Their mouths are how they investigate. And the moment they realize we're not prey, they let go. Truth 3. Sharks are incredibly diverse. There are over 500 species of sharks, and most of them are small, gentle, and completely uninterested in humans. Some are the size of your hand. Some glow in the dark. Some walk on land. Yes, really, using their fins like little legs. Truth 4. Sharks are ancient. They survived 5 mass extinctions. They outlived dinosaurs. They've watched continents drift apart. They're not monsters, they're elders. Truth 5. Sharks keep the ocean healthy. They remove the sick and weak. They prevent overpopulation. They protect coral reefs. They maintain balance simply by existing. If sharks disappear, the ocean doesn't just lose a predator. It loses stability. When sharks decline, The ripple effect is immediate and far-reaching. Here's an example. In some regions, when shark populations dropped, mid-level predators like rays and smaller sharks exploded in number. Those predators then overate shellfish populations, especially scallops and clams, which devastated local fisheries. Communities lost income, ecosystems lost balance, and all of it traced back to the removal of sharks. Another example. Without sharks controlling herbivore populations, algae grows unchecked. Too much algae smothers coral, smothered coral can't recover from bleaching, and reefs collapse. Sharks aren't optional. They're essential. They're the quiet architects of ocean health, and when they're gone, the entire structure starts to wobble. And this part breaks my heart a little. The less people see sharks, the more they fear them. It's backwards, but it's true. When something becomes rare, it becomes mysterious. When something is mysterious, it becomes easy to misunderstand. And when something is misunderstood, fear fills in the blanks. It's a feedback loop. Fear equals fewer sharks equals more fear equals fewer sharks. And the villain edit keeps looping in the background, reinforcing itself. But here's the thing. Fear isn't the only storyteller. Connection can be too. And that's where everything starts to shift. So let's talk about the sharks who never make the news. The ones who don't fit the monster narrative. The bamboo shark. Small, patterned, gentle. Often no bigger than a cat, and they spend their days weaving through coral like shy little guardians. The epaulette shark. This one can walk on land. Well, not land, but tide pools. They use their fins like little legs to move between pockets of water when the tide goes out. The Greenland shark, one of the oldest living vertebrates on Earth. Some individuals alive today were born before the United States even existed. They swim slowly, quietly, carrying centuries of ocean memory. The thresher shark, this one's really cool. They hunt using their tails, long, elegant whips that stun fish with a single flick. The angel shark, flat, camouflaged, peaceful, more like a stingray than what people imagine when they hear sharks. The manta ray, yes, I'm throwing this in here because it's related to the sharks. A gentle, soaring giant with a wingspan wider than a car. They glide like underwater birds, curious and intelligent. The whale shark, again, because I love him. The cosmic giant we met earlier, a creature painted in starlight. These are the sharks people never hear about, the ones who don't fit the script, the ones who prove that the villain edit was never the truth. There's a point in every story where the narrative cracks, where the version you've been told stops lining up with what you were seeing with your own eyes. For a lot of people, that moment comes the first time they see a shark in the wild. Not on screen, not in a headline, not in a panic-driven news segment, but in the water. Because when you're actually there, when you're floating in their world, watching them move with this calm, ancient confidence, something shifts. The fear doesn't make sense anymore. They're not circling. They're not sizing you up. They're just existing. Going about their day, doing what sharks have done for millions of years. And suddenly that villain edit, it feels small, shallow, manufactured. Because the truth is so much quieter, so much gentler, and so much more beautiful. So let's flip the narrative completely. Sharks aren't dangerous to humans. Humans are dangerous to sharks. For every human injured by a shark, millions of sharks are killed by humans through fishing, bait catch, finning, habitat loss, and yes, the fear-driven culls we talked about earlier. Some species have declined by over 90%. Some are on the brink of disappearing entirely. And the ocean feels every loss. Because when sharks vanish, ecosystems unravel. Balance disappears, reefs weaken, fisheries collapse, biodiversity shrinks. The real danger isn't sharks. The real danger is a world without them. So let's talk numbers. Not to scare you, but to ground you. Every year, cows kill more people than sharks. Vending machines kill more people than sharks. Selfies kill more people than sharks. Falling coconuts kill more people than sharks. Sharks, on average, 5 to 10 fatal incidents worldwide per year, out of billions of people entering the ocean. And even then, sharks aren't attacking. They're investigating. They're confused. They're reacting to murky water or splashing or silhouettes. If sharks wanted to hunt humans, the numbers would be vastly different. But they don't. They never have. Because we're not part of their story, we're just visitors. So this is where the episode's going to shift a little. It's where the science meets the heart. There's something I want to share, and it's not about science or statistics. It's about why this matters to me on a personal level. Sharks have been given a villain edit for decades, and maybe I feel connected to them because I know what that feels like. To be turned into something you're not, to have your story told by people who never really knew you. So I speak up for them now because no one did that for me when I needed it. And I won't let their truth get lost the way mine once did. I'm not saying my story is the same as theirs, but I understand the ache of being misunderstood, of being flattened into a version of yourself that doesn't match who you are, or being cast as the villain in a story you never agreed to be in. And maybe that's why I feel this pull, this responsibility to speak up for sharks, because they can't correct the narrative themselves. They can't rewrite the script. They can't stand up and say, that's not who I am. But I can, and I will. So here's the hopeful part. And yes, there is one. The narrative is changing. Slowly, quietly, but undeniably. More people are diving with sharks. More documentaries are telling the truth. More scientists are sharing their research. More communities are protecting coastlines instead of culling them. More kids are growing up fascinated instead of afraid. And the sharks? They're responding. Populations are stabilizing in some regions. Marine protected areas are working. Shark tourism is replacing shark hunting in places where fear once ruled. People are starting to see sharks not as monsters, but as guardians. The tide is turning, not because of fear, but because of connection. The Bahamas banned shark fishing in 2011, creating one of the largest shark sanctuaries in the world. Since then, shark populations have rebounded dramatically. Reef sharks, nurse sharks, hammerheads, they're thriving. And the ripple effect. Coral reefs are healthier, fish populations are stronger, tourism is booming, communities are benefiting. All because sharks were allowed to come home. Palau declared its entire ocean territory a shark sanctuary. The first country to do so. They recognized that sharks were worth more alive than dead, not just ecologically, but economically. Shark diving now brings in millions each year. Australia. Whale sharks return here every year, drawing researchers, divers, conservationists from around the world. Their presence supports local communities and inspires global protection efforts. These stories matter because they prove something essential. When we protect sharks, the ocean responds. When the ocean responds, everything else follows. I want to be really, really clear about something. The podcast isn't about guilt. It's not about shame. It's not about telling you to overhaul your life or memorize a list of eco rules. It's about connection. Because when you feel connected to something, you naturally start to care for it. You make different choices without forcing yourself to. You speak up without feeling pressured. You become part of the story without even realizing it. So here's a few gentle, accessible ways to support sharks. Ways that don't require money or travel or expertise or living next to a coast. 1. You can shift the narrative when you can. If someone says, sharks are scary, you can say, actually, most sharks are shy. They're nothing like the movies. A tiny ripple, but it's a ripple and it matters. Support sustainable seafood when possible. Overfishing harms sharks indirectly. Choosing sustainable options helps keep ecosystems balanced. 3. Follow shark scientists and conservationists. Your attention amplifies their work. Your curiosity fuels awareness. 4. Share the wonder. A photo of a whale shark, a fact about manta rays, a story about a gentle reef shark. Wonder spreads faster than fear when we let it. 5. Stay curious. Curiosity is the opposite of fear, and curiosity is where connection begins. That's it. No pressure, no perfection, just presence. When I think about sharks now, I don't think about the headlines or the movies or the fear. I think about the quiet moments, the way a reef shark glides like it's part of the current, the way a manta ray flies underwater like it's made of silk, the way a whale shark carries a piece of the night sky on its back. I think about how ancient they are, how essential they are, how misunderstood they've been. And I think about how easy it is for a story to go wrong when fear is the narrator. But fear doesn't get the final word. Not here, not anymore. Because the truth is simple. Sharks aren't villains. They never were. They're guardians. They're stabilizers. They're the quiet heartbeat of the ocean. And they deserve a story that reflects that. If you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Sharks are not the monsters we were taught to fear. They're the misunderstood ones, the misrepresented ones, the ones who got the worst edit in cinematic history. And I think a lot of us know what that feels like. To be cast as the villain in someone else's story without ever getting the chance to explain who we really are. To have our intentions misread, our actions twisted, our character flattened into something unrecognizable. Maybe that's why this matters so much. Because sharks aren't the only ones who've been misunderstood. They're not the only ones who have had their story told by people who never really knew them. If you ever felt that, even once, then you already understand sharks more than you realize. You know what it's like to be seen through the wrong lens. You know what it's like to be judged before you're known. You know what it's like to carry a story that isn't yours. So when we rewrite the narrative for sharks, we are doing something bigger than correcting a myth. We are choosing compassion over assumption, curiosity over fear, truth over the easy, dramatic version. And that choice ripples outward, into the ocean, into our relationships, into the way we see ourselves and each other. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with an open heart. Thank you for stepping into the water with me, even when the stories you grew up with told you to stay on the shore. In the next episode, we're going to have a little bit of fun and talk about some of the more quirky individuals living in the ocean. But for now, take a breath. Picture a whale shark drifting through blue water, starlight on its back. Picture a manta ray gliding like a winged shadow. Picture a reef shark weaving through coral like a guardian on patrol. And remember, they were never the villains. They were just waiting for someone to tell the truth. And that's all the tide brought in today. I'll meet you next time where we'll keep exploring what lies beneath the surface.